All right, today we're actually going to be looking at another visual novel, the first visual novel I ever actually bought or experienced, and that's AI Somnium Files. Now, quick recap, as I typically do, of what this game is. AI Somnium Files is a detective game visual novel kind of experience where you are going around trying to solve the murder mystery of a murder serial killings, the new Cyclops killings, with your companion or partner Iba, as well as other characters you meet, trying to deduce what happened there, as well as doing some gameplay things relating to being able to go inside people's minds and figure out clues and piece together their memories to help solve the case. Most of it is visual novel based with fully voiced dialogue, as well as the gameplay sections, which we'll get to in a moment, that kind of involve some puzzle solving, right? So that's kind of what it is. I'm adding a section here that is relatively new as a dedicated section called Unique Mechanics. We're going to talk about some things I think the game does very uniquely that set it apart from others in its genre. I do talk about these kind of things in my other reviews, but they're kind of intermixed between the other categories here, and that can kind of get a little muddy, so I'm just going to kind of lay them out here. I think AI Somnium Files, in terms of visual novels, really does a great job in terms of its presentation. There's a lot of fully 3D environments and fully 3D characters. The entire thing is mostly fully voice acted. Everything is very nicely designed and laid out. Nothing feels poorly made or poorly put together. There is a lot of branching paths and a lot of quality in terms of the general storytelling and general layout, as well as the kind of understanding that there's quality of life things like a log for dialogue, ability to save and reload previous saves, and other beneficial aspects like an archive system to be able to go back and reference characters and dates and events if you forget them later on. So I would definitely say its presentation and its fully voice acting, its full 3D environments, and the fact that it does have that gameplay that sets it apart from more traditional, like fully visual novels like what Type Moon tends to do. So if you're looking at like what sets this game apart from other in its genre, it would definitely be that presentation aspect, as well as kind of the story that takes place in it. It's much more interactive than I think a lot of very traditional visual novels would be. And third thing here, do I recommend this game? This is a kind of tough one because AI Somnium Files is a series. The first game, which is this one, the second game, which is AI Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative, which I'm also playing through currently, and a upcoming game, No Sleep for Konami Date, that is, I think, end of this month, I believe, end of May 2025, and so those are the three games. This game here, I don't know if I can recommend. And the reason I'm saying that is because I am going to have to get into some slight spoilers in order to kind of talk about this. I'm not going to spoil too much about the ending or anything like that, but I do need to kind of talk about why I have issues with this game. And that is to say, well, I don't necessarily recommend the first game. Playing the second game currently and kind of understanding where that falls into the timeline, if you will, I would recommend that anyone that's interested in a game like this play the second game, because from what I understand, at least so far, it is not connected to the first game. The reason I say that is because you will probably have a better time getting the second game because it has better and more varied gameplay, which we'll talk about in the gameplay section. It also has better quality of life settings and just better kind of layout for things. It's a little bit longer, so if that was kind of a concern, again, we'll talk about length here in a minute. And it performs way smoother on Switch with better quality models and visuals, as well as performance, which is obviously something we'll get to. Spoiler alert, the performance of the first game is very poor on Switch. Story as well, I believe, on the second game will make more sense, as you won't be bogged down by having the info that you have from the first game, as from what I understand later on, especially later into the ending parts, they kind of retcon a lot of stuff in the second game that the first game does, and that can be confusing if you are playing the first game and have knowledge of the first game, but if you don't, then you actually get a better experience because you're not thinking about how everything connects in your head, right? So I would definitely recommend the second game over this first game because of those things. The more varied gameplay, the better quality of life, the longer runtime, the performance improvements, as well as the story making more sense. So for this game, this AI Somnium Files of the first game, I generally speaking would probably just say watch a synopsis if you're interested in like the story, and get the second game and play that, because I do think there's a lot of things in here that are really great and you should absolutely be checking out, but I don't know if this first game is where you should be checking them out. I think the second game will give you more of what you're looking for and what you'd hope for an experience like this. Real quick before we go on to kind of my issues that made me say that decision, It's on everything. It's on Switch, it's on PS4, it's on Xbox, and it's on PC. It is about 23 to 27 hours long. There's not a ton of extra stuff, so it's basically just main story and then you're done. I completed it in about 25 hours. Pricing and sales, this is usually a $40 game. It was recently on sale for extremely cheap, but I don't believe that is going to be a standard sale price. So I was able to get it for, I think, $18, I believe. It is frequently now on sale for about $16. It was recently on sale for like $4, which is like a mega sale or something, but I don't suspect that that's a sale that's going to come back. I would suspect that you can probably find this game for about $15. So full price for $40, but this one is for $15. For the second game, if you're interested in that one, it is full price $60, but is frequently on sale. Again, they had a sale for that one too. I was able to pick that one up for $9, but I don't suspect that sale, as I mentioned, is going to be a current thing. So you can usually pick that one up for like, I think $18 or $24, I believe, because the sales tend to be based on what the original price is, and the second one's more expensive. I've frequently seen the second one on sale for $24, but I think I had seen a sale before the most recent one for like $15. So it got down to what the previous one's low price was. So if you're interested in it, I would say you can find the first game, this one, for about $14, $15, and the second game you can find for about $20 if you're trying to average out the sales. I wouldn't recommend either of the games at their full price. I definitely think for these kind of things, it's definitely kind of like a wait and see. I would also mention that both of these games do have a demo, so if you are interested in the game but don't want to have to fork over the money, you can try, I believe, both games. I know for a fact the first one, this one, has a demo. I'm not sure about the second one, but the first one absolutely has a demo that you can try out and kind of get used to how the dialogue works and how the game works, and then your save does carry over. So if you just want to check it out, there's a free demo that's available on all platforms, which is really nice to kind of help you get that knowledge. But yeah, that's kind of the pricing and sales aspect of it. Last minute on any kind of notes, all the footage was captured, unfortunately, because it's Switch footage, and there's still issues with capturing Switch footage and having it transcode correctly in editing software and have it look like a normal piece of software. I'm using other people's footage. All the links to their footage and their channel are down below. Most likely going to be PC footage. It could also be other console footage. I will try and show screenshots when I can of the Switch to talk about some of my problems with it. But most of this footage you're seeing is not mine because, as I said, I have the Switch version, and that version does not run well. So let's just get into the gameplay loop here to kind of explain what you're really doing, and then we'll get into kind of my criticisms of it. So the game loop is pretty simple. You're a visual novel, so you're going to be starting out in an area, clicking on things to investigate them, using Iba's ability to kind of like x-ray stuff and learn more about it. You're going to be sort of going through the different dialogue choices and learning more about what's happening to kind of gather clues, go between different locations to gather those clues, and eventually you'll hit a fork in the road where you get to a somnium, which is kind of going into someone's brain and reliving their memories. This is where the gameplay, more concrete gameplay part of it comes up, and this is kind of where you start to have some issues. So the gameplay fundamentally is you have a time limit, everything you do consumes some time, and you have objects to interact with, and you are trying to interact with the objects in the correct order to solve the locks, and there's kind of hints hidden throughout. But you have to do that in the certain order to unlock the lock. Once you unlock 3 or 4 locks, or 5 locks, it's kind of dependent on the somnium, you will complete the trial basically and unlock some hidden factor. Some of these are kind of multi-branching, so if you have one that has 2 options, you'll have a split in the road that you can decide what to do, either path A or path B, and then you do that, and you'll be able to go back after that fact to go to the next branching path, because a part of this game is obviously going through all the paths and learning info on each path to take into the other path you do to kind of piece together the story and what's happening. It's kind of where that works. So you're investigating, clicking on those choices, hearing the dialogue and stuff, and then going into the somniums, kind of recollecting their memories and using that to help solve the case. The issue arises with the god-awful gameplay of the somniums. Now, I'm aware that this is fixed in the second game, which is why I recommended the second game, but in this first game, it is trial and error, time-limited, no kind of sense of consistency, and it's repetitive. So you get basically all the worst options. Oh, yes, and RNG system as well, I forgot. So you basically have a time limit. It's about 6 minutes and seconds. Everything you do, including moving around stuff, requires time limit. And the interactions you do to activate certain parts of it are almost all the time completely nonsensical. Sometimes you'll have a give me here or there. Well, a lot of the time, like a good example is, in order to unlock one of the paths for a Somnium, you have to go up to a surgery table and pretend to do surgery. And that will take, let's say, 120 seconds. And that's a long time. So what you might do is go to a door, for example, do a thing on a door that takes 10 seconds, and you'll get a teammate, which is basically a way to shorten, like an effect that lets you shorten the time duration. So it's this puzzle game of figuring out, okay, let me interact with a door, take 10 seconds away, get a teammate that's like half time. So then you can go over to the table, do the surgery, but activate that teammate on it, so it's like half time, right? So that puzzle is basically figuring out what things you need to interact with in what order to get the best amount of time and not run out of time, right, while trying to complete the puzzle. In that example, you go to the door, do that, go to the operating table, right? You're going to use your teammate, and then it'll be, instead of 120 seconds, it'll be 60 seconds. You'll do that, it'll say something happened, and you'll see on the side the little bar moving. So that's kind of your progress indicator of, okay, the thing you did's a thing that's working. In that example, in order to get to this path, in order to go to the next lock, basically, or the next puzzle, you have to do that again. There is nothing in the kind of environment or the dialogue that suggests you have to do the thing you just did again. But if you do that again, and again, it's 120 seconds, so you have to find a way to reduce that. If you do that again, you'll complete the lock. That's one of an example of a completely nonsensical, no hints in its environment or in its dialogue to give you an idea of you have to do this thing twice in order to unlock the next part and that next piece, right? The other one is the RNG aspect, and this was really a problem towards the end. There is absolutely a point where you can get soft lock effectively in this game because sometimes the teammates, again, the things that help you reduce time, are randomized on a lot of options. You don't know, and sometimes it can be not randomized, but you don't know that. So it's basically a gambit of, okay, am I going to go to this thing, and if I do like a time to be able to go to the next lock, right, the progress steps, if I do that, am I going to get hit with a double or a 3x death marker? And the death markers are really bad because they're randomized negative effects, but they force you to use them. So if I do something that's required for the next step, right, and it's saying, search the mirror or look at the mirror, hit the mirror, whatever it is, and it gives me a 2x death marker, now my next interaction is going to be double time. Most of the time you can't afford that, so then you have to kind of dispose of that, and then it gets really annoying because it's random. So a load or a version of this, you might be doing really well, you might be getting through all the locks, you've gone through all of them, you're at the last lock, you do this thing, it's double time. That's a randomized aspect. The next time you load into that save, it's not going to be double time, right? Or maybe something else. So I had that happen a couple times where I'm going through this, I'm almost done, and you do the last thing, you do the last objective, and it's double time. And you're like, God damn it, I soft locked myself effectively, right? Because that double time boosts the last thing, which usually is a large quantity of time. It boosts it over your time allowed limit, right? And if you do that, you fail, right? And so it's really annoying when that happens because it's RNG on top of all the other trial and error crap that's having a time limit. The only saving grace to this whole system is that there's guides and they're very quick and easy to do once you get the guide. And also there is retries. Unfortunately, one thing I did, because I didn't want to retry and use one of my retries, is I tend to just save it, because the one thing is you can save at any point, including in the middle of this, so you're not like locked out of it. And so you can basically just save, scum, and reload. Issue is, at least on the Switch version, there's no way to load a save from the menu. You have to go exit to the main menu and then load. Kind of maybe to disincentivize this, but I use that very frequently because I was just really annoyed at all the times that it would randomly RNG double cross death or something, right? But overall, if you get through all that gameplay problems, and there's a good amount of them, and there's just one I kind of remembered, and I was like, oh my god, this was awful. But yeah, so part of the gameplay loop is going through those Somniums and having to deal with this awful gameplay that is improved in the sequel. So again, that's why I recommend the sequels, because it's a lot better when it comes to that gameplay. So how to play the game, it's a visual novel, so it's not that big of a deal. You have your standard buttons, they're all laid out for you in case you forget. There's auto, there's skip, skipping. So if you enable in the settings skipping dialogue you haven't heard of before, that will let you skip dialogue if you're reloading, because what will happen is you reload and the game doesn't think you've done that dialogue before. So you should enable that thing in the options that basically says, hey, you can skip dialogue you haven't seen before. So that lets you skip the dialogue that you actually have seen before, but you've reloaded, right? So you'll do that, and you have to press the right bumper, the right shoulder button, ZR, at least on the Switch controller, and that will let you speed through the dialogue. So I recommend turning that on. Pros and cons. The pros, again, presentation. The quality of the voice acting is also pretty good. The general detail in things is also really nice. The quality of the story, I did ultimately really like the story and kind of how it worked, and also, relatively speaking, like the structure of the kind of like flowchart that it did, and it's on sale frequently. The cons. I didn't really mention this up until now, but holy god, this thing runs horrible on Switch. It's actually kind of weird because the second game runs so much better. It doesn't run well on Switch. There's one error kind of where it's like trying to load things, and you can tell because a lot of the time you'll have the IBA thing pop up, and it's like referencing a scene or a character in what you've previously done. But because it effectively loads the entire scene in memory in that mode, what'll happen is you'll be on auto listening to the dialogue. It'll pause for like 30 seconds, and then it will like chug at like 5 FPS to load up that scene, and the scene will be at like 360p, barely recognizable, and it will make everything else, including the text scrolling, like painfully slow, like 5 or 10 FPS, and it looks ridiculous, and it's so low resolution, and it's crazy. But it happens quite frequently because there's not enough RAM on the Switch, so it has to keep cycling all this, and it's just really kind of odd. But so that's a major con, is how the performance runs on Switch just in general. In terms of the gameplay, again, the gameplay of this is just not kind of what I would call good or enjoyable in most aspects. Again, not having a thing like a load ability. So I would say the really three is the gameplay, the bad performance on Switch, and the kind of existence of the second game just being a better option for most people if they're trying to get into something like this. I do like the story so far a little bit more in the first game, but that is not to say that any of these other things, like I can't recommend it because that gameplay is so painful, and that is a decent chunk of this game is the gameplay, right? And it's kind of, it predicates everything on it because it's effectively the story, and your enjoyment of the story and the characters and part of the visual novel of it is going to depend on how long it takes you to get through these gameplay sections, right? And also how those gameplay sections kind of affect how the story is told. Because again, branching paths, right? So you may do a Somnium and do the A path, but not like where the A path goes. So then you go back and do the B path, right? And depending on how you do this, kind of the flow chart here can affect your enjoyment of the story. I follow what the guide kind of said, which is to do the left side of the tree, then the right side of the tree. And if you do that, you get a very relatively well-paced game. If you do it in any other order, like do some of the left, some of the right, then you get a horribly mismatched mess. So I just recommend, doing that. But I'd overall say, like, typically at this point, I would say, the pros outweigh the cons. But in this case, I would just recommend the second game. I do recommend this series overall. I really like what they do with the presentation and with the kind of quality of the writing. But I don't think this game is the one to really showcase that. In terms of platform issues, at least I didn't have any bugs. So I didn't notice really any bugs or any weird things that had me force reload. But obviously, performance issues on Switch are catastrophic a lot of the time. It's a visual novel, so a lot of the normal kind of clicking on stuff and the environments aren't that bad, but it's absolutely when you get into these frequent sections where Iba pops up the scene in a scene and it just destroys the Switch's ability to do anything, right? So that's kind of a little bit annoying. But overall, and as a conclusion here, I recommend the second game. Just so far, it's much cleaner in terms of visual style, as well as the character models and everything. Same quality of the presentation, same quality of the voice acting, all that, but it does have that better and more varied gameplay. It does have some nicer quality of life settings. It's a little bit longer. It's about 27 to 30 hours, so you get a little bit more length there. And as I say, it runs out considerably better on Switch, and the story is going to make more sense. So I just overall recommend that. Obviously, if you can pick this game up for like $10 or whatever, I'd say just check it out and try it. As I said before, it has a free demo, so if you're just interested in this series at all, I'd still recommend the demo, because to me, the demo is kind of what sold me on the game to begin with. But I'd say overall at the end here that, I definitely recommend and like the second game more so than this first game. But on top of that, the demo, and you can try it out. And I think you would probably be pleasantly surprised by what this game is able to offer. So hopefully it was interesting. Hopefully you found that useful, and I'll see everyone in the next video.